Are we on? Are we on? Welcome, welcome, welcome to Basketball Heads Live. I am your host, Glenn Poole Harding. And oh boy, we have a very, very special guest. This basketball head is a Queens, New York native and one of the top coaches in New York City. With 15 years of coaching experience, she continues to serve as a committed and dedicated professional through community organizations in New York City. She was named 2020 New York Knicks and Junior Knicks Coach of the Year. Also named Regional Positive Coaching Alliance Double Gold Coach of the Year. 2 in 1 year, so you know we're dealing with a big-time coach. She served as assistant coach on the championship girls team during the legendary New York versus New York Nike tournament held during the summer. This basketball head is the founder of the award-winning nonprofit grassroots organization, Grow Our Game, leading efforts to break generational poverty and advocating for our youth in urban communities. You know, all through the love of basketball. Most recently, she was selected as a Nike Made to Play grantee for its profound impact in the New York City girls basketball community. Her energy remains unmatched as her love and passion for the game of basketball empowering young girls is served constantly worn on her sleeve. So, without further ado, help me welcome to the show one of the most dynamic coaches in girls basketball in New York City, Grow Our Game founder, Coach Chiene Joy Jones.
Y'all ready? Y'all ready? Yes. You have just stepped out into the world of chaos. Where everybody goes hard. Come on. Go hard. Go hard. Go hard. Go hard. Go hard. Go hard. Or go home. Never back down. You gotta hold your own. Go hard. Go hard. Go hard. Go hard. Go hard. Go hard. East Coast. Go hard. West Coast. Go hard. Midwest. Go hard. Dirty. Hurry up, everybody. Get online. Buy your tickets cause the game about to start.
Hey, what's happening, Coach? How you doing?
I'm awesome. What a crazy, dope intro that was. Your own right. So that's a big shout out to you, brother.
Thank you. Listen, well deserved. Listen, when I first heard you speak, right, during the Brevo Coliseum, even though it was a brief moment, I saw the passion. I felt the passion coming from your voice and how you commanded the crowd, and I knew I had to have you on the show.
I appreciate that. And also shout out to, again, the great work that you're doing in the community over in Brevard. I honestly, that was my first time ever being in that community and literally being a participant and a spectator, right? You did a great job this summer. It was awesome to see the community, receive something really special that obviously kind of went away for a while, but is back. So, salute to you, brother. And you're an incredible team. Because definitely isn't a person to make obviously a league run, but really, really awesome job.
Thank you. We couldn't do it without the team and definitely the community that supports us. So appreciate having you on. So I like to kick this off with the question I ask everybody who come on the show is, who introduced you to the game?
So it's pretty easy for me. When I was in elementary school, my best friend Yvette Battle, who's now Dr. Yvette,
Nice.
shout out to Brownsville Orthodontics in the South Side of Chicago. My best friend, she introduced me to the game. She convinced my parents for me to go with her to basketball tryouts over at St. Nicholas de Tolentine here in Queens, right, not too far from Pominock, actually. And I loved it. It was the first time I ever had played basketball. It was the first time I was ever in a space with so many young girls like myself that just enjoyed being active. And from that point on, I was hooked. And so I was involved in a lot of things. I played the cello for a very long time. I was in the band in high school. I was also a Girl Scout for a very, very long time as well and achieved my silver award. Um, but the one piece that kept on drawing me back each and every year was basketball. And so, while my parents did make attempts for me to enjoy so many different extracurricular activities, I think that basketball stuck largely because of the sisterhood that I fell in love with. And again, I'm so grateful for that opportunity of being exposed to the game. And again, it was not by my own interest or my parents' interest; it was by my best friend.
Salute to your best friend. That's awesome. I think that's one of the first times I've heard that. Um, it's usually the parent, uncle, sister, brother, but when you get reeled in by one of your friends, it makes that, a lot better, and that connection is a lot stronger. So yeah, salute to your friend. Appreciate that. That's dope. So St. Nicholas of Talenton, right? Because the St. Nicholas of Talenton I'm used to is up in the Bronx, right?
Rock.
Where like Ernie Myers and John Johnson and all these guys went to. Was it a small CYO situation that what was happening in Queens?
It was a small CYO situation. And again, this is the way the basketball world works, right? Reggie Brown, from Archbishop Malloy, who ended up going over to play at University of Richmond, his mom was my first ever coach. So imagine.
Wow.
Exactly. And her sister. So imagine being this like young black girl, right, from Queens, and all of a sudden you walk in to a basketball tryout and you see these like tall, beautiful black women, right? That was my introduction to the game of basketball, outside from my best friend introducing me to the game and convincing me to go to these basketball tryouts. So I think that I was really blessed to have that introduction. And again, it continued on as I went through, the different levels and stages of playing basketball in New York City. I was just really, really blessed to have women. And they were pretty damn good, right? Pretty damn good coaches. And so, again, St. Nick, every single one of us from that particular cohort of players on that team, we all continued on to college, which, as we know, going to college is already a big deal, right? Being from the inner city, but going to college on a full scholarship, all of us going to college on full scholarship is pretty remarkable stuff. So, I really went with Grow Our Game. Whenever I talk about who was your first coach, I know the impact and the importance of having someone so amazing for your foundation. And so for me, it's a true testament to it. And so again, St. Nick was dope because it was CYO. We're hoping to try to figure out how to kind of reignite CYO again, right?
That was going to be my next question because I started out at CYO with, the legendary Mr. Thomas Diggs, who we named the court after, and, played at Victory Church, St. Claver's, and all those. Those are like the beginning grounds for New York City basketball, right?
Correct. And I think again, as we continue to look at how, youth sports in general has become so much about the bottom dollar and become a billion-dollar industry, we forget about the power of the grassroots, right? And so instead of offering watered down services, right, trying to figure out how to get back to that place where, we just learned straight fundamentals and learned the game and enjoyed actually going outside to play, not just to only compete, right? I think that that's really, really important as well. So, that's where we are. But outside from obviously reigniting it, we also need great coaches. You had a great coach. I had great coaches. I think that many can see some programs even in CYO where there was a reason why all of these amazing young kids were going to like Mount Carmel up in the Bronx, right? Like there was a reason for that. They had great coaches. And so again, um, I think that that's a big piece that we're missing. There's so many other pieces that we're missing, but again, just understanding what that journey is and the rites of passage of going to that next level, right? Like you can't actually play middle school ball if you didn't really do well with your CYO team. You're not making that team. Same thing as you go to high school. It's almost like understood. unless you're super talented. Most of you are playing junior varsity, but that's really not what it is nowadays. So again, trying to build out that pipeline of better talent, I think, is a huge priority for me, at least in the girls, basketball space.
Well, you talk about competition, right? When we talk about the founder of the game, James Naismith, I think he quit Kansas University because of the competition aspect, right? And we lose out on the teaching portion. Competition, makes everyone better in a certain space, but when you kind of want to connect that love to it, right? First, right, and that's where it
Yeah.
usually comes out,
Yeah. And
in
also
that first beginning. Yes,
doing it for your own interest,
yes,
so that it's not necessarily fueled by your parent or fueled by someone where they're making it feel like it's a win at all cost model, right? It's eventually you're going to compete because again, we're New Yorkers, so
that's
survival
right.
a big piece of this journey of life here in New York City. But I think again, we just got to get back to kind of the grassroots on some things, and obviously, of course, building out a stronger pipeline of coaches is also really, really important as well.
Definitely. Coach Haskins said that as well. He said we have to get and make sure that the coaches get better. And your part in New York City has been tremendous because when we talk about girls basketball and its growth in the last several years has been extraordinary, right? And I know you played a huge role in that. And I tell people all the time, especially for my guys who don't live in New York City anymore, and I tell them, I said, yo, our girls are going to better schools straight from high school than our guys. And it was flipped back in the days, especially when this legend was playing Katasha Artist, right? For South Shore, who at the time when she was playing, South Shore wasn't a powerhouse as it was now because she was building the building blocks. And you had a chance to have your hands in on some girls early to kind of make the New York City girls basketball game grow. So, kudos to you.
Thank you.
Definitely.
I think again, I subsequently ended up getting into the grassroots space because of a friend, right? She was like, "Hey, there's this opportunity over at Riverside Church. Would you be interested?" And it was kind of like, I don't know about that because I was actually coaching at New York University at my alma mater. At-
Okay.
And so again, when I think about like my decision to choose to do such, it was almost like a really dedicated one. So you could definitely say Mark Jerome, he was the director at the time. I used to go at it with him because I was fighting constantly for space and availability. And then eventually, after my 7 some odd years there, I ended up transitioning back over to my own AU alma mater, which was New York City Gauchos. Walter Welsh was my coach during that time when I was in high school, and Earl Elliott, obviously now is the director and has taken over the girls program. And he gave me a chance, and he was like, you know what, just come to some workouts. Going to some workouts ended up becoming me basically running their middle school program, right? And it's not, they didn't really have middle school before that. So again, I really want to thank Earl for giving me the opportunity to kind of have the full autonomy to just dream, right? And do and create a schedule that I thought would be competitive, but also develop the young talent that, again, now are either graduating out of college or currently in college and doing well. So my last kid, she's now a freshman at the University of Oklahoma. Another from that younger group, she is a freshman at UNC Chapel Hill. Another is actually a freshman at St. John's University, right over here in Queens. Another's at St. Peter's, and again, the list can go on, right? Because I'm so proud of them, but I'm also more so proud in the parents for trusting the process of development. Um, and so again, like that's really a big, huge piece of this is understanding that you don't necessarily need a trainer. Do trainers help? Yes, but they're not to be a supplement for your interest in getting better yourself, right?
No, that's good. And two of the most storied AU programs Riverside and Gaucho. So salute to everything that they're doing up there. And let's tap into your beginnings, right? You talked about CYO. What was your transition like into high school? What high school did you go to and play for?
So I make a joke about this all the time because I was supposed to go to Cardozo, and ended up applying to the wrong program. My parents just really were not into basketball to be in tune to that component.
Right.
So ultimately, I ended up going to Flushing High School, and I had applied there as my second option because they had an amazing law program. And so that's where I went. I was in there, I guess, talented and gifted program. Um, from middle school on, well, really elementary school up through high school. And I ended up playing at Flushing High School for Carla Nasso, who's amazing. Um, there's still Coach Richardson, who's there for the men's side.
Yes.
And he's great. His daughter actually plays basketball too now, which is really, really cool. I believe she's heading on off to college. But, again, Flushing High School that was my high school experience. I'm a New York City PSAL product and really, really proud of it. And again, was still very much so not in tune with the men's side of things. Like I remember Ron Artest playing over at Elmcore. Obviously, you had Andre, Talik, Omar, right? But again, for me, it was like not a big deal. Maybe because I lived in Queens, but also maybe because my parents were just super protective. So again, I was outside from basketball and of course school. I was in the band. I was playing instruments, right? I was going to different summer school programs
Right.
because that's the investment that my parents made in me. And so again, I'm really appreciative for that, but I also was very out of the loop. Like I didn't even know what Rice High School was until until I actually started putting the pieces together a little bit more because I knew the names, but I didn't necessarily know where the school was. Never went to a Rice party. Like that just wasn't really my lane. But again, shout out to Chris Fouch, who was actually my assistant athletics director during the time that I was the AD over at the Harlem Children's Zone. And again, he put me on to a lot more history with Rice
Listen.
and understanding the brotherhood.
Yes, listen, Corey Homicide Williams came on the show and told me he was in Rice High School and didn't know it was such a storied program. He was like, I was walking through the hallways, looking at Felipe, watching these guys, had no idea where I was at, And think about you at Forest Hills. Forest Hills won the first city championship in New York City high school basketball. On the guys' side, yeah.
Forget, was it Jaja Bay that was playing for Forest Hills or
Jaja Bay? Yeah.
because that was like again kind of during my time. We talking late '90s. So now I'm giving
No,
age.
I work with Jaja. He's my guy. He's my guy with the LIU as well. Yep.
Guys. But again, a lot of these guys I just didn't really know. I didn't have much interest in knowing because that
Right.
just a circle I was rolling in at the time. And again, going to NYU, it was also very different because I had a chance to befriend and, he actually became one of my mentors, the late great Cal Ramsey, right? And so
Yes, salute. Rest in peace.
he
Yeah.
he kind of put me onto a different way to look at college athletics and really the business behind the scenes of leveraging being a student athlete and how that can help you in the future. Not really NIL stuff, but more so like really creating a pathway for your future, for your career. So salute to Cal. But yeah, that's
No, it's interesting that you said that as far as leveraging what you bring to the table for yourself to have a better life, after basketball. Because one of the reasons why I like to bring guests on the show is to show kids that there is life after basketball, and you're going to have to transition. There's all those transitional stages that we go through as basketball players to get to the next level. That's going to prepare us for life. Listen, it's way more of us than people that's going to make it to the NBA or WNBA. Okay? So I tell people and tell kids, let them know, you want to put yourself in a position when you can kind of leverage your skills to get you a better education, to get you in those programs, those low degree programs, or, you want to be an educator, whatever you want to be, but you want to leverage that to make sure that you have something to fall back on, at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, again, NYU, I like to always say, is the gift that keeps giving because, yeah, between my friends and, you know, my teammates, I just have a great network of support. And so, again, it's just something because of me being who I've always been, pretty genuine and authentic for forever, like love it or hate it, whatever you want to say. Um, I'm pretty much the same person I was back then, and definitely the same person I was back in high school. I think maybe I'm a little bit more polished on a few things, but it's definitely a huge, huge blessing for sure.
What park did you grow up playing in? Like, what was the park in your neighborhood that you played in? Let some people know about the neighborhood.
Yeah, so I'm from Briarwood, Queens, which is a small little community nestled right after Kew Gardens and right
Yeah,
before you really hit Jamaica, like the Jamaica, meaning like Hillside Avenue, Parsons, Archer, right? To me, that's like Jamaica. But and again, that's Jamaica, not South Side. South Side's also different too, right?
yeah.
There's Queens got neighborhoods and it's very distinct. So again, I was born and raised in Briarwood, and my playground that I had the battlegrounds and war stories. And again, salute to all the men of Briarwood that came to Hoover Park to one bust my ass, excuse my
Go
language,
ahead,
bust,
go ahead. That's okay.
right?
It's all right. All right.
But that I also like built my toughness as a result of, right? Briarwood was great in that sense. And again, it was right. Hoover Park is right across the street from Malloy. Come
Mm-hmm,
to find
mm-hmm.
out, I used to tell the Malloy kids, "Don't ever go to Hoover Park. It's too dangerous. Don't ever go." I'm thinking like, what are you talking about? This ain't like Rufus King Park. We not down the hill. We up the hill. But again, Hoover Park was my my stomping grounds, and it still is. I think being able to bring the grow game program to my community in Briarwood is something I definitely want to do in the spring/summer. So we'll see how that goes. And also reconnecting with St. Nick is actually another item on the list. But I don't can only be in too many places at the same time, right? I can only be in one. So that'll come in due time. But Hoover Park, yeah, and they call it Manton Playground, but
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
Hoover Park where the basketball courts are. Basketball courts, handball courts. And in the back, you have the softball field. Right across the street, you had Archbishop Beloit High School, which was kind of dope because in the wintertime, we'd hop over the fence and play football. And again, this is just part of growing up, right? Being in a safe area or sometimes like pretty decent area that you can actually be a kid and do things and your parents will let you just go out. You might have $1 for the entire day. I don't know how I was able to survive because I probably would never be able to do that now. But literally, you get the juice, the big, and we talking like this. It wasn't even sips. I forget. I think it was sips. The big half gallon of juice that was like $1.
Yes, yes, yes. It was Sunny Dew. Was it Sunny Dew?
It I don't even remember the name. I know that let it sit too long outside, it start tasting
Right.
like cardboard, but
Yes, yes,
still drink
yes, yes. Right, right.
it, right? You didn't want the nasty water from the fountain in the park.
Yeah.
So, that's what we did. We would go to the Big Apple games and
Hold
then
on. Time out. Hold on, hold on. Tech on the play. Listen, listen. For those of you that don't know about the Big Apple games, please, please, coach, just run down why was the Big Apple games so important for us coming up in New York City.
So Big Apple Games was a community program that happened in all of the boroughs. And the best thing about the Big Apple Games was one, it was actually nestled in different schools throughout communities, right? So you had, again, a space to go to in the summer. You'd be able to play all these different activities, arts and crafts, right? So you'd actually be able to do like the little rope things, and you'd have little keychains. And then again, they also had sports. And the beauty with the sports component was that they also had an opportunity where all the sites and from all the boroughs actually competed against each other, right? And so I was actually a winner, citywide winner. I remember this was I want to say it was my freshman or sophomore year in high school, and I I beat every single girl within my age group throughout all 5 boroughs, and the championship was actually at um, Riverbank State Park. And I remember them messing up my name when they announced me winning, and my dad screaming out as crazy as, for those that know, y'all know my dad is a little crazy, screaming out the correct pronunciation of my name. It's Chiene. And running down to be so happy to win, because the year before that I actually only came in second place, and I was really upset about that.
Well, we telling people what you were competed in so they could understand.
So it was like different things, like the shuttle run. It was like push-ups. It was like I want to say it was like pull-ups as well. It was kind of like the standard presidential workout. I think at the time the president had like a special like routine that he wanted.
Like a decathlon, similar to a decathlon, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Awesome. And I loved it. And again, if you have a body, you're an athlete, right? I know that kids nowadays, they're so hooked on the computers, cell phones, and all those other things. But for me, Big Apple Games was a home away from home. And also, not for nothing, like we were pretty poor back then. So we also had access in that school to go around through the back and also get free school lunch. And if you woke up early enough, you'd get free breakfast as well. And those juices and the little ices and little burgers, like those things really helped us and held us down. So yeah, that was the Big Apple Games was a great opportunity. And again, it's so disheartening to see how things are going in the city, because there's so many different programs that really helped, right? And you didn't put the blame on anyone. It was just a matter of the funding. Right now, you see the PAL trying to do a lot more in the community. You see a lot of organizations, community-based organizations, trying to make up for the lost kind of space. But again, the whole point of being able to have programs like the Big Apple Games and even the housing tournament, right? Because we're talking now about basketball.
Oh, legendary. The Nitro tournaments is so legendary. Oh,
And I
yes.
live in public housing. I played on the team. We,
Right.
we had a few. There was a bunch of us, right?
Yep.
We figured it out and we represented a particular site. But all that to say, again, when the funding gets cut, there's a lot of things that actually get cut as a result. Now you have, again, we talk about the power of community coaches, and you said that brother Haskins mentioned that. He speaks about that quite a bit. Our new executive director for the PSAL,
Yep.
former decorated LIU coach, who Calipari made sure that media put some respect on his name. And again, big Boys and Girls Club, but I mean not Boys and Girls Club, sorry, Boys and Girls High.
Well, he went to Boys and Girls, but
Alum.
he coached alum, but he also coached the legendary Alexander Hamilton team, which played the first national televised game on television against Benjamin Franklin in Philadelphia.
There you go. So I love the historical context too, because to me, like, I want to learn more. And I think again on the girl side, there is a fair amount that I don't know that came before me.
Right.
Most of the things that happened in the 90s, and if you continue on, I'm very in tune with. But I think again, it's awesome for the show because you also learn a bunch of things about a bunch of people that you might see and have no idea that was in their portfolio. So again, salute to basketball heads for all the great work and the historical context that you're bringing to the New York City basketball space.
Yeah, I had so many people hit me up in my DM and was like, I didn't know Mario Ellie was from New York City. I was like, we know if you're not, you're not from that era, you wouldn't know. There's certain coach hit me up the other day because Coach Haskins, who's like the godfather of the show, he always hits me up and makes sure that the history stays intact. And there was discussion that Mario and myself was having about the person who won the most NBA championships from New York City. And I had no idea was Sat Sanders.
Sanders, NYU alum, baby.
I didn't know that. Good job, right? See?
Celtics, Boston Celtics.
Yes.
And so that was the cool thing too, right? Is that when I decided to go to NYU, I did a lot of research about the history of our programs, because if folks don't know, our men's program was actually Division I before, there were some issues with financing and a little bit of gambling as well. But again, I think I love those types of fun facts because again, I'm never I can never say that I'm not learning something new. Um, just being in this space. So yeah.
No, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. And another NYU alum, one of my teammates from the Empire State Games, Dwayne Shake Martin, who went to FDR and graduated from NYU as well, and became a famous actor. So, you know, it's a lot.
Dwayne was right before I came. He was a big deal, obviously,
Yes,
actor and
definitely.
all the goods, all the goods.
My guy Todd Rivero from Harlem said, "Tell Shanae I said hello." From Full Court 21, which was created by my guy Barbito Garcia, who I was speaking to today.
So Babito Garcia is one of my brothers.
Yes.
For a fact, I actually worked with him with Full Court 21 since its inception. And I was his official scorekeeper. So I had to know all the rules and did the scores and was there pretty regularly each week. Um, and it was great because I actually knew Bob before that, but
Hmm.
I don't think I officially knew him until that point, right? And again, shout out to Bob. I know he has a new book coming out. Not sure if I can really talk too much about the book.
Yes, you can because we're gonna promote it right now. Yes, yes, he sent it to me today. I'm gonna get it out because I'm gonna make sure I have the correct name. It's called Aim High, right here. Aim High, Little Giant. I will
And
be posting it tomorrow by my
yeah,
guy Barbito Garcia. Yep.
yeah. And Thaina, the main character in the book, is actually a Grow Our Game participant. So she rocks her Grow Our Game shirt throughout, and it talks about um,
Wow.
her trials and tribulations of being in the city and obviously dealing with COVID during an unpredictable time. And again, all of the lessons she learned from her family about, the importance of tradition and culture, but also safety, right? And what that means. And obviously, she has this love for basketball. So definitely check out the book when you can. And again, shout outs to Bob, my brother. Uh, such a good man, such a
Yes.
good, great man, great husband, great father, just overall great human being.
Yeah, we've been friends for a very long time. Speaking of basketball players who have books, this is Tomel Murphy's book, Poetry in Motion. All right, Tomel Murphy,
Out, right?
ball player.
Book.
We also have my guy Delbert Prince. He wrote the history of Coney Island basketball.
There's a lot of history there.
You know, we also have Nikki McCrimmon's book, Harlem Queen.
Yes. Shout out to Miss Nikki. I
Yep,
love
and
it.
yep, and also Dr. Laura Milley, Christ the King Great. This is her book.
That's a powerful book right there. That's a powerful
Yes.
book. Mental health, just something we're starting to kind of talk about. We're starting to talk about a lot more now with, there were a number of suicides that happened with student athletes over the last couple of years. And so it's coming into the forefront of why we need, right, and have the responsibility as coaches and even as like the village, right, to find opportunities to um, take care of our athletes, and it starts with their mental health. It's not just about production on the court. So yeah,
Yeah, she was also uh the first Miss New York basketball, right, for the state of New York. For the city, not for the state. She was the first one from the city to
got it.
win Miss Basketball, and then suffered a traumatic injury at Arizona State, and then all the underlying mental health issues that come along with having an injury, and then coaches and all the things that the weight that athletes go through that we don't really talk about. And I know back in my day it was kind of stigmatized, and now is being brought to the forefront, which it should be, and it's very important because without your mental health, you can't really do too much, especially on the basketball end or even in life. It's kind of hard without getting the right support.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And those transferable skills, though, that's why, again, this stuff is so important when you decide to actually coach, right? And I say decide because usually coaching, it's, younger teams, you'll find a parent that says, okay, let me coach my son's team or let me coach my daughter's team. But again, like being able to fully understand your power, right? You're working with kids. It's just like anyone that's in the education system, anyone that's a teacher, even a dean, right? Like the most important piece is that you're molding these young men and women, right? And the responsibility that you have of making sure that they're understanding that life does come with trials and tribulations, but how to overcome that and build that perseverance and grit. I think it's something that sometimes I think a lot of folk take for granted. Um, but it's still very, very powerful. Very, very powerful stuff.
Definitely. Who was the best player in your neighborhood when you was coming up?
So the best player in my neighborhood growing up didn't
Uh-huh.
go to school.
Talk about it.
He didn't go to school. He didn't go to school. And I'm not even sure where he is right now. Um, he was really good though. Like, I'm talking really good. Like, he definitely could have played varsity high school ball based on his talent, right? But I think that the bigger piece was, again, are you built for a team setting, right? Like, because he was like one of the biggest sore losers ever, but he was really, really good. And so it's so interesting. I think about that quote that Ron Artest said. He was like, "Oh yeah, I know some dude from Queensbridge. He's locked up over at Rikers, but he could be in the NBA right now. He's better than Michael Jordan."
We all have them, right? We all have them in our neighborhoods.
We do. And so again, it's fascinating to see that, because I already knew like the things he was able to do with the ball and how he moved on the court. And again, this was kind of also with the introduction of Kobe Bryant as well. So even like those little move and fadeaways, it was really, really interesting to see. He was good. But again, ultimately the streets took him as opposed to school and basketball. But that's probably one of the nicest
Wow.
in our neighborhood. And our neighborhood's a very small one. So
Mm-mm-mm.
I'm definitely the best girl ever. But
Talk that
he
talk, coach.
he for sure would be one of the best guys that I've seen from our neighborhood.
Right. So when you was coming up, who were some of the girls that you kind of competed against in the city that was doing their thing that you had to go up against?
Oh yeah. So there was Donna Nando. There was Valerie Katsorhis. If you talk about going into the other boroughs, there was, because these are like Queens girls. And again,
Mm-hmm.
the dynamic for girls back in the late 90s, it was interesting. There weren't a lot of teams at all that traveled, and there weren't a lot of teams in general.
Yeah.
You were good enough to make the team, or you just weren't good enough, right? And so again, you had some of your grassroots programs that played in local events, but they knew that if that young girl was really, really good, she had to play with a very select number, right, of teams. And it was the New York Gazelles, and we're talking at this period of time in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
York Gazelles, it was the Liberty Bells, and then you also had Gauchos that was kind of introduced in, again, the late 90s. Liberty Bells, you already knew that was exclusive for the Catholic school girls.
Yes.
Christ the King, St. Francis Prep, Janelle McManus, dead nice too. She went to Bishop Kearney. But and oh, the late great, I'm blanking on her name right now, from Christ the King. Again, Christ the King had some crazy killers.
There's too
So I
many.
can't
There are too many. They had
I
too many to
name
name. Yes.
all of
Yes.
them. But
Yes.
again, Gauchos, we were kind of like the bad news bears, to be quite honest. We were like all of these girls, black and brown girls, girls of color from the neighborhoods, right? From the community, playing. And so that was also very interesting too. But I think about Squeaky. Um, Squeaky was really good. She's from Brooklyn.
Yes, I
Aaron,
heard about her. Yeah.
yeah, she's really good. Little lefty. But she was really good. And then again, there were a lot, like there's just too many girls to really talk about, because at that point in time, you also, again, it was like a select number, and you knew them because guess what? They were also shouted out in the New York Post, in the Daily News. You had all borough, all city teams. I
Did
don't
you have
know
the mug
where.
shots as well? Remember the mug shots, right? The all city teams. You get the mug shot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I made all borough for Queens. I made first team for Queens. But my thing again, There were girls that were way better than me. Like I'm talking way better than me. Even Simone, like Simone from DeWitt, uh, what is it? DeWitt Clinton.
DeWitt Clinton, yes, yes,
Yo,
yes.
she actually passed a couple years back due to cancer. She lived in my neighborhood. I used to see her all the time, which was so interesting. Um,
Wow.
but you know,
Rest
she
in
was
peace.
extra nice, extra nice with it. And again, there's so many others. Jess, I believe Jess played at Manhattan Center, if I'm not mistaken. She was at Manhattan Center, had a great squad because Shavon Glover was coaching there too. So again,
Mm-hmm.
we knew of some of the local pieces, right? Some of the local pieces, but there were always powerhouse programs. And again, Christ the King really they were very good. They
Every
were very,
year, every year,
very,
every year.
very good.
Those my people that saw on Instagram, please come over to YouTube. Y'all know I don't do Instagram no more. So I'm just on live to direct y'all over to the page. So come over to the page and come check out my sister. All right, for sure. So when we talk about you going to NYU, how was your time there and how was your transition on and off the court as a college athlete, student athlete?
So I had an opportunity of going to an HBCU, two different ones, Morris Brown as well as Howard at that time. And I also was considering a few local schools. This was also interesting because I didn't know how much it would impact my recruiting process. Again, parents didn't know too much about it, and didn't really inquire either. Um, but I chose NYU because of the academic strength that the school had. And
Mm-hmm.
also, not for nothing, we were the best program in New York City, Division 1, 2, or 3.
Mm.
1997, they ended up winning the national championship. Obviously, this is Division 3, right? But that's still a pretty high level, right? And then the same thing, 98, they ended up going to the Final Four, constantly going to the Elite Eight, Sweet 16. So it was a no-brainer for me to go to NYU because I wanted to have 20 plus wins each season. I wanted to fight to win a national championship each and every season. The schools that were recruiting me, I'm a winner, and I would not be able to handle going 2-19 for a season.
And being a woman, right? You can score all these points, but you're losing, right?
Right, but also again, there's really not much money in women's basketball and girls basketball. It's
Right.
definitely getting a lot better. Collective bargaining agreement. You got NIL now.
Yeah.
Sedona Prince makes over like $500,000, supposedly, allegedly, through NIL just last year alone, which is like huge. But again, for a young girl of color from like an inner city neighborhood, the next step was something that my parents constantly talked about. So playing at NYU, deciding to go Division 3 was the best decision of my life. It pushed me competitively to a space that I never thought that I'd be able to actually reach. And again, my coach Janice Quinn, who's no longer the head coach there, it's one of my former teammates and one of my sisters, Meg Barber. Um, it was just the best decision of my life. And I think, again, when I say NYU is the gift that keeps giving, it's because I made it that way.
That's
I
right.
put myself out there to be able to get to know the folks that worked within the university administration, within the athletics administration, and more so than anything else, just being like a good person. It gave me a space to be able to figure things out. It was definitely different academically, 1,000% different. Only because again, public school, getting straight A's, we're good to go. Let's go off to college. And then it's like, boom, you get hit with a ton of bricks because you're like, wait a minute, this isn't the type of
They,
work
they didn't
that I
prepare me
want.
for this. They didn't. Yes,
You mean
yes.
it's gonna feel like an AP class in every single class? Oh nah. So again, it was interesting because I was also part of the HEOP program.
Definitely remember that. I think she's frozen on her side. Let's give us some time to come back in. The EI program is definitely legendary. I know a lot of kids who went through that program and gave my opportunity to go to
Okay.
college. Yes, yeah,
Sorry about that. I think
that's
I
okay.
service, I don't know. But all that to say though, right? I ended up going to NYU. Was a great decision in my life. Ended up also then from there being able to transition into coaching at NYU, which again, for many that don't know, that is a very highly sought after position because it's one of the few full-time positions in the country.
Mm,
So as an assistant coach, you're a full-time assistant coach for a Division 3 program. That actually doesn't really exist. Most Division 3 programs, I'd say 99.9% of them, you're a part-time coach, you're receiving a small minimal stipend, and usually you're doing like a whole nother full-time job, whether it's in the administration or outside of that. And so again, the responsibility I had while coaching at NYU was doing the same model, right? Finding players that met not only our academic criteria, not only our skill criteria, but also again that could either afford the school or would qualify for our program, the Higher Educational Opportunities Program, which again, even looking back, I didn't realize my family was as poor as we were until I found out that I'd qualified for HEOP and read, well, what does it mean to be in poverty? Like the poverty line? Like what? So my parents made this? What? Right? So they did a great job of hiding it because we, majority of the time we were blessed enough to have food in our refrigerator. We never really needed stuff. I never wore the nicest clothes. That's just how it was. I never wore the nicest sneakers. Um, when I was a kid and, middle school, high school. It just wasn't really a big priority to my parents nor to myself because that's just, I guess, how they raised us. They raised us off love, not necessarily material items. But best believe as I started to become a professional, I actually ended up having to acquire some of those items that I wasn't able to afford when I was, my parents weren't able to get me when I was a kid. So,
you
that,
know,
that was NYU.
I listen. I tell people all the time I have these conversations. You think about the parents who did the job they were supposed to, right? A lot of times these kids have more than what they want, right? Not a lot of what they need. And you can see that in some of the upbringing. Sometimes the parents can balance the two, right? But it's rarely seen. But when we talk about again those coaches who those grassroots coaches who kind of made some of the greatest players in New York City history, both for the girls and boys side, didn't have big sponsorship. They didn't have money, right? What they gave us was the time, effort, and love that came with that made us who we were and who we became later on in life.
Hammer Stevens, I think about him all the time because Hammer was the one, right? For a very, very, very long time. He was the one that you would bring your daughter to. He was based in Amsterdam. Uh Amsterdam, wait, was it Amsterdam project? No, Douglas. What am I talking about?
Douglas
He was
houses, yes,
project. Yes.
yes.
So he was based in Douglas projects, and as we know now, that area is kind of completely gentrified right off Columbus
Mm-hmm.
Avenue. But that's what he did for a very, very long time. And so again, I think that that's pretty powerful stuff because once you become really good and you know that you're providing opportunities, families are going to come. Families are going to come. So
That's right. That's right. So, you know, when did the coaching bug kick in? Did it happen after college, or you saw yourself doing that while you were playing?
it honestly happened during college, but my coach at the time, again, Janice, Coach Quinn, she was 1,000% convinced and tried to turn me off to coaching for like years, until I was getting ready to graduate, and I was like, Coach, this is something that I want to do. Like I know that I am passionate about this, like running the scout, learning how to defend ball screens, like just everything about the strategy of the game was really like drew me more into the game, right? And so all she kept saying was, don't you want to make more than your mother? Don't you want to make more money than your father? Like, why do you want to get into coaching? And she just didn't fully understand. I know what she wanted the best for me. She wanted me to be a successful businesswoman in corporate America and, you know, make a ton of money and live on Wall Street. And that just is that's not what God's plan was for me.
That's right.
Right? That was what she wanted for me. But again, she was big enough to take a step back to say, you know what? This is what you really, really want, huh? So let's see how we can make this happen. So again, at the point when I actually got onto the staff, I was a volunteer assistant coach. And within a matter of almost a month and a half, I went from the volunteer assistant coach all the way up to the recruiting coordinator, first assistant coach. There's some crazy things that happened in between that. But she ended up having to step down. She had a pacemaker put in, so she could no longer coach. The coach that ended up rising up ended up having to step away and resign from his position for, you know, whatever reasons there were. And so again, here I go, this little black girl from Queens, recent NYU alum, getting ready to become the recruiting coordinator for New York University, one of the top Division III programs in the country, and definitely one of the top girls basketball programs in the country.
Wow, that's amazing. Definitely was God's plan. Can't run away from that.
Let me tell you, I fought her on that every single day. I fought her. It was almost to the point where it's like I was talking blue into the face about me wanting to coach. And again, she gave me the opportunity. So forever blessed, forever. She looked out for me in more ways than I can even explain on this podcast. But Janice, thank you.
Salute for sure. What were some of the things you learned during your coaching stint at NYU that kind of prepared you for all the things that you're doing today?
Definitely understanding the power of culture and how to never negotiate yourself for a family, for a child that's going to interrupt the culture.
Mm.
That I think it's part of the reason why we talk about the grow our game Kool-Aid, and all our parents drink it, all of our young girls drink it, and it's just what we do, right? It's what we do. And so you know, again, our sistered affirmations, that's just a great example of culture and how, again, even at NYU, we have the sisterhood, we have tradition and the power of girls that graduate returning back. I've played in every single alumni game except I think one.
Wow.
since graduating. And each group, it's like, you know, when I actually transitioned out after my 4th year, those recruits were like, I can't wait to play you in the alumni game, Coach Jones. I can't wait to play you. And, you know, it's like, okay, you talking now. All right, we'll the alumni game. But, you know, again, there's just so much pride in being a Violet and being a part of the NYU women's basketball program. So for me, I know for sure that that was one of the most important pieces I wanted to make sure that I continued on with. And that's the same thing even in my profession, right? The culture is so important and not negotiating yourself um, or your culture at the mercy of anybody. I'm real quick to say I kick parents off before I kick kids off, right? The kids, they're children. They're learning, right? I can't fault them for how they were raised or what their environment has been or what the support or lack thereof was. But you damn straight, I will say bye to a parent with the quickness if you are going to be toxic and try to destroy the culture that I'm putting up, especially because we're the only free program in New York City that does this work, basketball and leadership skills for girls between the ages of 4 to 7 and 8 to 11. So I refuse not negotiating myself for anybody, not negotiating my culture for anybody either.
I was talking to a friend of mine's, referee Arthur Lee Walker, and we was coming from IS-8, and he was just explaining, you know, we was talking about the parent involvement towards the referees, right? And he was saying, yo, some of the hardest parents are the younger kids' parents. You think the high school kids' parents are a lot to deal with. The younger kids' parents A lot. Especially, I was just at the ref in the CYO game, and the parents talking to me like they're the coach of the, they're coaching the kid when the coach is right there, and they're yelling at me, yelling for the sideline, coming onto the court. He had to put one parent out of the gym, and I was like, wow, the little kids' parents are a lot to deal with. And I know you seen your fair share.
So again, I'm a referee. I'm an official. I'm part of
Oh,
the
you're official.
women.
Oh, okay, that's
I'm part.
awesome.
I ref the quarterfinals game and what was it? Semifinals game for the PSAL AA championship. I was supposed to do the A championship game during the pandemic year, but
Yes.
unfortunately we ended up cutting things. So again, I didn't have a chance to do that. But as an official, what I will say is it definitely is the responsibility of the parents. I mean, let me take a step back. It's the responsibility of the coach to rally the parents. I've seen it go both ways. I've seen coaches get on parents for talking to the refs. Like, no, 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 we're not doing that. Leave the refs alone. That's on me. But I've also seen coaches rile the parents up to kind of create this bonfire effect against the officials. And the only thing I will say is that officials are human too, right? And certain things are very subjective. So what you may see may be completely different than what somebody else sees, right? And sound doesn't is not indicative of anything. So just because you hear a slap, that doesn't mean anything. So please stop saying that. Oh, I heard a slap, so that's a foul. Please stop saying that. It's not indicative of what we see.
Right.
But I think the bigger piece, right, is AAU is so challenging. And it's also why I don't officiate AAU. You're getting paid about $22 a game for 10 games throughout the day. You try to run up and down a court for just one game. You get back to me and let me know how good you are. So when again the day progresses, they're not running anymore and they're only getting paid like $22 a game. So, again, the ferocity in parents comes with the frustration, but they need to understand that it's also a business as well. And not for nothing, officials are getting the short end of the stick when it comes to AU and having to officiate in these grand scale.
Why are they getting paid that much when AU's big business?
That's why. That's why. That's why.
Somebody, people need to take a stand on that. That's
Listen, I ain't
crazy.
doing it. I ain't doing it because the other thing is that now when you say, "Oh, well, we'll pay the officials more money, more problems," right? But again, in New York City, at least, there's a really clear understanding of like rates, even though again, those rates vary as well. Because again, summertime, like you want the opportunity for the teams and for the kids. So you're not going to try to charge crazy amounts of money. But AAU for sure could be moderated in a way that at least there is quality pay for officials so that they could actually get quality officials as opposed to people just looking to make a quick buck.
Right. And you're doing like 10 games after like the third game. I don't even think officials should do more than two. After a while, it just becomes,
But that's why also it's like a money grab. So you can't be mad at the refs for wanting to
No,
ref.
I'm not. I'm not. Of course, if you're getting paid pennies, it's like, come on, I got to make up for, the lack thereof.
Correct. But again, shout out to all of my officials out there. And I always encourage. I became an official because I wanted to just learn the rules to learn how to kind of cheat for my girls. I'm not even gonna lie.
No, Coach Haskins, salute to Coach Haskins. Coach, I love you so much. Coach said coaches should become referees because they'll make them better coaches, so they'll understand the game even better. Right?
I was teaching my kids the wrong damn thing for years and was trying to understand why they kept getting called for a foul when they were cutting off the sideline. Why? Because their feet were out of bounds. So as soon as you touch the player, boop, that's an immediate foul because there's a disadvantage to the offense and an advantage for the defense because you're stepping literally out of bounds. How many people were taught that? It's wrong.
It became, I think they changed it because during my era, they didn't call that. Like the coach would tell us that was, the right way. I guess, and then they had to kind of change it as time went on to
This
balance it
is
out.
chucking the cutter, right? I used to
Yes.
be told in college that you better meet them and greet them. Don't let them cut in front of you. You
Yep.
better
Yep.
greet them and then go shut them down. But again, boo, that's a foul. Chucking the cutter, that's a foul. So again, I encourage anybody that is coaching to definitely get their certification and don't try to use it against the refs because that's also very petty, right? Use it to empower your players.
Definitely. Definitely. Where did your drive? Where can you say your drive and passion come from to help youngsters break them? The generational poverty in our communities. Like, where did that come from?
I mean, I think it came from my upbringing, really. And then I think I was able to take a deeper dive when I became the athletics director at the Harlem Children's Zone. Um, for 7 years there, it exposed me to a lot more around education reform and obviously, Mr. Canada's vision for ending generational poverty and what that looks like. And so I knew that the impact that I was having as I continued coaching, we were doing the same exact thing, but we were doing it through the lens of basketball. And so why not be able to continue the narrative but using what I do really, really well, which is teaching the game, motivating young girls and their families to a space where they can just be great, right? And be able to, again, change the trajectory of their lives forever with just this positive um, approach and program. We're not the last stop. We're just part of the village that it takes to get that child and family to where they want to get to.
You have another one of your friends checking in, Barbito Garcia. Says Chiene, full court piece, women's final champion 2014. For sure.
Yes, that's when we was in Cuba.
She averaged 25 in high school. Go ahead, Bob. Talk that talk. Let her know.
Love you. It was at 28, but that's okay. That's real
I
facts.
love it. 28. Whoa.
Not that on the girl side, trust me. That's like if you're good, I tell my girls this all the time. If you're good and you're playing in the PSAL, right? There's no reason why you shouldn't be averaging more than 20 points a game.
Mm.
Right? There's no reason. If you're playing on a much more competitive scale, which again, when I played, we didn't have divisions, but then eventually they broke up the division. So now you have teams that have multiple players that are really good. Got it. You're playing a system. Got it. But if you're just kind of like a kid like I was and playing on a local high school team, there's no reason why you should not be dropping some serious buckets.
That's true. My bad, Bob. Full court 21, not full court piece.
No, we
Uh,
did full court piece though in Cuba. So that was
yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what she said, right? Okay. Okay. Cool. Cool. And full court piece, actually, salute to them. They came out and fixed Brevoort basketball court. So salute to Mike and full court piece
yes,
for
salute
sure.
Mike Evans. That's my brother. That's
Yep.
another brother from another.
Yep. So let's talk about grow our game. That awesome shirt that you have on right there. And how did you start it and when did you become a part of the Nike family tree?
So, so I actually became a part of the Nike family tree when I was the athletics director at the Harlem Children's Zone because we officially had become a Jordan Wings Foundation school, right? And so there was an amazing piece that they did with us. And it also, again, was at the right period before the pandemic began, where they celebrated us and they called us Joyful Warriors. And that's my middle name, Joy.
Yes.
That was pretty amazing. I'm not even going to hold you. But Grow Our Game actually happened off of like a whim of me just wanting to do my own program for younger girls without having to necessarily be at like the mercy of the older teens because gym space is really tough. I don't know why it's so hard in New York City. It's like really crazy to me. But again, I just had a vision of being able to provide support for much younger girls because as I continued on I started seeing like more more young girls and they were interested in playing basketball and they were trying to find me to coach but I was already aged up with my last young group, right? And I told Earl, I was like, listen, I got 5 more years of this. So I'm going to just roll out with this group, and then we're going to figure things out after. And so, grow our game, that was the catalyst for it. I knew I had 5 years at Gauchos, and I was like, I really want to try to do something that's very different, and I really wanted to do a non for profit. I will say Mark Williams also envisioned this for me as well. During the time that I was coaching at the Gauchos, he had interviewed me for something. This was before podcasts were like a really big thing, and
Right.
he was like, "Nah, Jones, I see you in a couple years. You're gonna have your own non for profit, and I don't know what it's gonna be, but I can see you doing like growing more." And so again, I tagged up with New York City Small Business Solutions. Shout out to them. And they partnered me up with some pro bono lawyers that helped me go through the whole registration process, right? Which is very long. It's very long, but they did it pro bono. And so I was able to become an official certified 501c3. And 2018, we kicked off. And again, my vision was to support super young girls to start the sports participation pipeline, and hit it as early as possible. And also, again, provide a great experience. Right, that's the whole point. It's basketball workouts, leadership skills, taking trips, doing this, but the secret sauce is there, and it's hard to really put my finger on what exactly it is. But when we talked about culture, right, that is also something that's very, very important. So I want to make sure that as girls continue from my program to other programs as they get older, they're very clear on a few things. The first is the hard work, right? The importance of the fundamentals. The second piece is like the love and joy for the game. It should never feel like it's this just crazy amount of stress. Like, it shouldn't be stressful, and if it is, like, you shouldn't be doing it. And then the third and final piece is the power of the sisterhood, right? And being able to find others and bring them in, and that's how you continue to build your power and your strength, is through your sisters, and also helping those that kind of come in to understand what it is to be a sister, because not everyone's going to be a grow our game girl, even though
That's right.
ideally I would love for like 100% of the young girls in New York City to come through my program. um, but that'll take some more time, and obviously recruiting and building more coaches.
Salute to Cash Jay, who's in the building. Say yes, coach. Grow our game. Another supporter
Yeah,
coming to check you out. That's awesome. So let's talk about the junior Knicks, right?
sure. And I'll
Um,
adjust this because my phone is starting to die, so I'm
okay.
kind of relocate slightly
Yeah. Go
over,
ahead.
but
Go
we're
ahead.
no, we're
Go
good.
ahead.
Good, because I'm like literally in my like good.
We talk about the Junior Knicks organization,
Yep,
which is very popular in New York City. Great organization. How did you become a part of that? And then I want to move into that great 2020 year. I think when most people was having a down year, that was like the year that kind of solidified you. Even though you was already solidified, but when you get your flowers and get recognized as coach of the year 2 times in 1 year, I think that's a awesome, you know, thing to have on your resume. So let's start with the Junior Knicks and how do you become part of that?
so it's interesting. For a long time, right? Like, obviously we know who the junior Knicks are, but I think that again it was a matter of being able to have a nomination, right? So there were a few families that actually nominated me for this award. I had no idea or no clue what it was, to be quite honest. I remember going to the Junior NBA Leadership Convention the year before last, and it's always been out in Chicago. And I would go each and every year. That was like a must conference, must attend conference that I had. Harlem Children's Zone, again covering the cost for my professional development. Um, and I remember them giving out the awards for it. I didn't connect the two together, right? The junior NBA and the junior Knicks didn't connect it until they ended up reaching out to me to say, "Hey, you were nominated." And I'm like, "Okay, okay, let's do it." Right. And I have so many of my friends that are like hardcore Knicks fans, like hardcore Knicks fans. So it was like, all right, let's drink some of this Kool-Aid and see what it's about. And so again, I was still working at the Harlem Children's Zone. Um, and we were having a session at their Armory location on a weekend. And I'm going there and they're just kind of interviewing me. I'm thinking they're interviewing me for, being one of the finalists. Come to find out as I come out, because I'm like, okay, we got to go because the session is about to start. Like, we got to go. Like, families are waiting for our basketball session. I'm sorry, I want to talk, but I got some things to do.
Right.
As soon as I walk out, like all the girls are kind of standing up, and I'm like, what is going on right now? This is a little strange. And then I see like John Starks walk out, and I'm like, wait a minute. Not gonna have John Starks up in here. I'm gonna have to give him a hug and say hello.
That's right.
I had a little old school, a little 90s moment, but it's so wild because then he said, all right, I want all the girls to turn around. And as they turned around, it said, congratulations, 2020 Junior Knicks Coach of the Year, Chiene Joy Jones on their shirts.
Wow.
Reveal was so dope. I was shocked. I did not cry. I guess I'm probably waiting for like a huge, 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 huge award to cry for. Um, Maybe that'll come when we finally receive like a full blown sponsorship, like full year round sponsorship. I'll probably cry when we get that check. But in the meantime, it was just such a surprise. It was beautiful, and it really, I think, gave a lot of visibility during a time where there was so much going on in the world. We continued with our workouts, which definitely increased over the time of the pandemic, where so many other programs decreased in terms of participation. Ours just kept growing and growing. We had coaches calling in from Sweden, from New Jersey, from New York that were helping, which was also huge. Shout out to the NYU, some of the NYU players that were dialed in and helping coach on Zoom with me during that time. Um, but I think, again, it was just a very special time, and it's something that I will always remember because it definitely put a lot of visibility to my program. April Rivera, that was there with the Junior Knicks at the time, Brett, shout outs to him as well, and shout out to Sydney's no longer there. The only people that are still there is Brett, but again, that group did an amazing job supporting us. And again, Lynn Bautista is now kind of taken on the reins for that. And her commitment to the girls' space is so big. And again, when people think about the NBA, they only think about boys, but there's so much more work to be done because most of these guys have daughters, right? And
Yep.
so, again, being able to provide a space of empowerment and positivity, it's not even just about basketball. It's not about, ideally, what I love for every single one of these girls continue on to college and play basketball. Absolutely. But in a real world, I just want 100% of them to become great people, right? Because that's what truly makes the next leader for the next generation. And again, the transferable skills that come with it. So, big shout out to the Junior Knicks. And then again, once that award came through, we ended up getting nominated for Junior NBA Program of the Year, which we didn't receive, but that's okay. Um, I was also, again, a finalist for the Junior NBA Coach of the Year.
Wow.
Huge. That's like all the NBA teams, G League and NBA. All those teams having sponsored someone. So I was a top 3 in the entire country for that. Um, but again, it's just so special to be a part of that cohort because I think it definitely catapulted the future winners, right? So Muggs ended up getting it, right? We also had Kenny Stevens that ended up receiving it. I think that those two folks, and it's so funny. I remember being in the space and advocating for Muggs, at least because I wasn't in there for Kenny Stevens, and I was like, no, 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 you guys have this man. This is the man that needs to win, and these are the reasons why, right? Because again, sometimes we forget about those folks that are in the grassroots that are developing these young boys into men. And again, it's pretty tough. Muggs is pretty tough. But when it comes to that Edenwald, Baychester area, that's his area. And he's had some amazing players come through, including now Ian Jackson, which is just, he's completely blowing up right? And training and doing all these amazing things. But he's done so much before Jackson, before Captain Jack. He's done so much work. So again, he was definitely deserving of it. But being in that space, you also are helping to inform others that may not be so in tune with the New York City space.
Now that's definitely so true. I'm going to reach out to my guy Shane Dribble Machine, who's from the Edenwald area, and see if we could get Muggs on the show. I had Steve Shepard, who I didn't realize who was such a big deal. Um, you know some things, and when I did the interview and all the comments and all the DMs is like, yo, Steve Shepard, you know, Derek Chivas hit me up, was like, yo, I used to go watch him and kind of pattern my game after him. And there's so many others who, you know, can't name at the moment because there was so many. But another guy from the Edenwald area who, you know, was a big impact on New York City basketball, Maryland basketball,
Oh yeah.
1976 Olympics, get drafted the second round. And now I'm in the process of trying to get him celebrated at the University of Maryland. Talked to my guy Garfield Smith, another University of Maryland alum, who played for the Gauchos, the Riverside, also came on the show, and we're trying to make that happen because those guys, you know, can't be forgotten. And this is why bringing women like yourself here, because you're having so much of an impact on New York City basketball, and I think people need to know your story, know what you continue to do to this day, and the light that's need to be shined on you. So definitely, man, salute.
I appreciate it, but I would be remiss if I didn't include a number of other folks that have been doing this long before me, right?
Yes, yes.
So Coach Joe from TMLA Positive Direction, Coach she's been tremendous.
I had on the show Coach
Good.
Joe Pinnock, Miss Pinnock. I had on the show. Actually, hold on. Actually, I have to go see her because she gets the New York City Legend Award. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? You know, she's definitely, yes, does an amazing job. Yes,
I love
definitely.
that. And again, there's a bunch of coaches. There's almost too many to name, right? That have done amazing work over the years. You obviously have Shavon Glover, right? One of
Yep.
the gatekeepers for the girls. Obviously, currently, again, you have Coach Anwar, right? That has done
He'll be on soon. Definitely.
over at South Shore. I think again, there's so many people. There's almost too many people to name. I would also again be remiss if I did not shout out the Brotherhood of Gersh Park, right? Because those gentlemen are doing an outstanding job. And again, it's just so powerful when you have a product that truly cares about the community because you end up having a reduced amount of violence
Yeah.
during the period of time when those games are happening, right? People think, oh my God, East New York. I've never felt as safe in a space than I have when I've been at Gersh Park. So again, for DP and Slills and Geach and the rest of the crew, Fly
Yes.
Tie, right?
Yep.
Well, I really need to make sure that I give space for them. And then, of course, we had New York versus New York this past year, which was huge, right? And again, to be able to have folks come on down to the East and see our kids play was also huge for me. So again, there's so many amazing people that are in this space. It's almost too many to shout out, but I definitely would have to make sure that I gave big props to Coach Joe and Coach Anwar and obviously the so many others. I did already shout out Coach Hammer Stevens, who I think is amazing, Coach Ron Glover, who was awesome. And again, my officiating crew. And of course, again, the men over at Gersh Park, DP and everyone.
Yeah, I had DP on the show as well. He you know, great guy, and what he was doing. He also came over to support us at Brevoort. So the whole Gersh crew. So thank you for all that you do for your community. We got Lee in the building to love her energy and what she's doing for girls basketball. I got my guy from WBH Radio. Salute for sure. Love what you're doing, King. So we're going, a few more questions. We're going to wrap this up.
Sure.
Now, one of the things I wanted to know is because I never heard of this before, the Regional Positive Coaching Alliance, double gold program. So now, when I heard about the double gold, I was like saying, is there someone out there actually celebrating the double goals, the double rims out here that we have in these parks? Like, tell me what that stands for and how you become a part of it.
So the double gold coach, right? It's basically, again, we're talking about drinking the Kool-Aid, right? Positive Coaching Alliance is a great organization that does tremendous amount out the world, right? I would definitely say within this country, but they do a lot of work worldwide as well. And their goal, like the goal of the organization, is to really promote becoming great people first, right? And winning is not ever a priority, right? Making sure that we're pouring into our kids more than we take out, right? So if we're giving criticism, one for one criticism, you got to make sure you put in two positive things. So again, some of this is just being able to reframe how we talk and how we coach our kids to making sure that, again, a big reason factor while kids will drop out from their sports participation is because of a negative experience with the coach, right? And so again, there's a responsibility and a role that we all have as coaches to making sure that we're pouring into our kids in the most
Mm,
positive and best way. And so again, um, the Positive Coaching Alliance provides not only a curriculum, but just general resources to better help you. They have a parents contract that I always will recommend for any program to use. It's an opportunity to hold the parents accountable for how they act during practice, during games, even while traveling with the teams, right? It's a way of them just understanding the importance of cheering for their kids and
right.
against somebody else's child. Because we all know as soon
The parent contract is so important.
right? And then again, they have a bunch of other material as well. I've used them a lot when I was the athletics director of the Harlem Children's Zone. They're a little pricey, but they also will work with different non for profits. So again, Positive Coaching Alliance, I would totally recommend it for any coach that's interested in looking. I was doing work with Emily Archibald from PCA, and they had reached out to me. Their chief of development also now doing like the training to become a certified PCA trainer. So that should be fun too. But yeah, that's kind of how I got it. It was a bunch of recommendations again from my peers, and so it's just a true testament to the work and the time. And there's so much more work to go. So there's so much more work to do. But it's definitely a blessing to receive these recognitions.
Yeah, because it shows you how important you are to the culture, for sure. Especially when you have so many people recommending you. It's cool when, people put in their slips and put in their own vote, but when other people kind of, nominate you, it means a lot more.
Absolutely, I don't even got the time to nominate myself, to be honest.
Yeah, I said the same thing. Said the same thing. So, uh, I want to bring it back to Brevoort, right? Because we have two of your girls, Jazara and Asmira Williams, the Williams sister, who I love so much,
Yeah,
and the fact that they come competing every game, they never miss a game, and even when they're not playing, they come to support. Salute to their dad Perry and
Brother
their
Perry,
mother.
wife,
Yes,
yes,
the
Miss.
whole Williams family. Um, how okay? Because for me, I'm seeing it from a whole different lens, right? You know, you have like Tiny Morton watching my guy Gavin from Dean Street, who part of Rose Classic, and younger brother of Anton, and they're just amazed at Asmera, because she was playing that day, right? And how old she was and all the things she was able to do. And you over there like, she better shoot. She like, and you having a totally different vibe in how we're looking at the game. What does it mean for them to be competing, especially with at that level and against all boys? Okay,
I
how
think
was that?
I think it's important. I think that again, when you're going to the park, you're playing against the boys. You're lucky if you find at least a second girl that actually plays basketball from your neighborhood. Again, depending on your community, depending on your local park, right? Because again, New York City, we have like 900 some odd basketball playgrounds. In all the five boroughs, Brooklyn actually has the second most, right? So again, there's no question or reason why Brooklyn and the Bronx do so well with basketball because y'all have all the courts.
Yep, yep, yep.
But again, and it's crazy because I tweeted this during the pandemic. I'm like, what's your excuse now? right? I did the research. I like counted all of the courts literally in every single borough and tallied it up and put in a tweet that kind of went semi viral or whatever. Because again, these are the things that we need to know. But it means so much for me to see as Marin Jazara play because again, it's part of the natural process, right? Of girl basketball players. And
That's
again,
right.
does such a great job of keeping them busy with so many other sports. Because again, these girls are like full blown athletes.
Run track, right? They run track. I know, definitely know
Basketball,
that.
honestly, basketball is not even the priority, right?
Right.
That's that's great because at least as a parent, you know you're not negotiating yourself or your kids for the sake of competition. You'll find when it's available, you'll find when it's possible, you'll get opportunities for them to train and work out, but you're not negotiating your kids or the enjoyment of being a kid for the sacrifice of a sport. And I think that balance, there's different types of balances, but ideally, like, for my future children or child or whomever, that's really what I would love for them, right? Is to understand the importance of not giving up, but also understand the importance of having options. Like you're not like you shouldn't be pushed into one option. And again, back in the day, young boys of color were playing baseball. Young Boys of Color was playing football. Young Boys of Color was also playing basketball. It just so happened that because it was so hot in the summer, you would continue playing basketball. But again, this idea of being a three-letter, four-letter sport holder, I think has left. And now all we want to do is talk about concentration of sports, and that's not okay. Like I ran on the cross country team, played basketball, played on the ran on the outdoor track team, and also snuck in some games with our soccer team, which I know was not legal. I was like in the top during some of those games. But
Right.
that's really what it came down to. And my parents encouraged it. So that's another big piece that I encourage for every parent is to stop trying to get your child to specialize in a sport when they're a young child. Give them the exposure to all of these different sports. And I will say for our young men, look into track and field too, because that
Endurance. Yep.
is transferable to so many different sports, including football, right? So that's just my 2 cents. But to see Asmar and Jazar play, again, it's such a joy to see. And obviously, yes, I'm going to have a high bar of expectations for them because if they're open, they need to shoot the ball, and if the lane is available, they need to drive to the basket, whether it's with their left hand for a left hand layup or the right hand for a right hand layup. And that's just the coach in me. But again, it's nice to be able to support them in a way that I really just haven't had the opportunity to do for some time. You know what I mean? Especially with the younger girls. And it takes a village. So it was great to be able to welcome Brevoort into that experience for them.
Well, we're definitely adding girls high school division this year. Um, Anwar was like, "Yo, Pooh, what's up, man? You gonna have a girls next year?" I was like, "For sure, as long as we get some help from." Remember, I told you this in the summertime. I said, "I'm gonna need your input to help us out with that area."
I would recommend middle school, but you can do your thing with high school if you want to.
Okay, okay. The reason why we can do the middle school because it's about them coming to the camp, right? That's how we built our middle school, and everyone have to get drafted. So people are not bringing in these outside teams that's girls over age, and we have to be checking, birth certificates and go through all of that. Now, you know how the game go, right? So, but we just want to give girls more spaces to play, especially to play, you know, under the lights, which is only reserved for the pro-ams,
Got it.
right? So we want to make sure that high school basketball has a light on it as well.
No, that's awesome. I think that's great. I think it's an opportunity for the girls that they just don't really have much of. You know what I mean? If you look around, especially in Brooklyn. I mean, Gersh, we started our high school girls division 2 years ago. It was pretty successful. And I think, again, being able to just ensure that there's quality opportunities for our girls is so important. So I would say go for it.
It is now question because I want to know, because I need to know this. Is there a need for middle school girls?
I mean, I think there's always a need. It's just about trying to make sure that the timing is right. But I would definitely say to refer to A about those things, because obviously he has a pretty good pulse on things. And then there's of course other programs as well, right? His program isn't the only program out there.
Right, right, right.
So just do your research, and I'm sure you'll be fine.
Yeah, I got a few numbers in my phone. We'll make something happen. All right. If you could change one thing about your basketball journey up to this point, what would it be?
If I can change one thing about my basketball journey, oh my God, I really wouldn't want to change anything because then I'd be a different person. It's like the butterfly effect, right? Um, but I think if I could change one thing about my basketball journey, maybe it would be me negotiating harder for some things. Now I'm very, very clear on like our worth and where we need to go as a program and as a non-for-profit organization. But I think early on I just wasn't too clear on that. And maybe that's just me kind of taking for granted just how powerful this was going to be. But now actually being able to see where we're going, the direction we're going. We literally had a record 96 registrants for our fall session, which is insane.
Mm,
Need to think about. Again, and we're in Harlem and in East New York, Brooklyn right now. Um, Being able to build out to scale, I think, is a huge piece, but I need to be able to have the monetary support to do such. I do not charge my parents a dime for anything, for not a basketball, not a shirt, not for their time, not for the gym space. $0. So I think again, being able to negotiate a lot more with the type of impact that we're actually having, and we have the data now to back. I think that that's definitely going to be the next steps. But definitely, if I was able to go back, I'd probably end up making that a lot bigger of a priority in my earlier years.
yeah, we make sure we don't charge our kids in the junior high school as well. We want to make sure that they have the opportunity to play and have a safe base to play. So I think that's important. That's awesome.
Going Big Apple games, PA,
That's right.
Empire State games, like all these things were free.
That's right.
All these opportunities were free. So again, trying to get back to that in the right way and support the community with it. I think that's just the goal. That's the goal.
All right, coach. Time to put you in the hot seat right now. We're gonna get into our top five, top five, top five, top five. All right, coach. Since you're well versed on, the happenings of girl basketball, uh, and I would say besides grow our game, because we'll put that number one. That's in the space by itself. I don't think there's any other girls program out here. You got positive direction and all those things, but what's the top five programs for girls basketball in New York City?
In New York City or like New York State?
We can go to New York State.
Okay. So there's obviously the usual suspects, right? So I don't want to make it seem like I'm being a hater at all. So,
You only get five. This is why it's the hot seat. Yeah,
let
yeah,
me tell
yeah.
you, there's only like five in full transparency, right? There's only like five. Um, in terms of the quality that's produced, that could be up for discussion. But of course, Nike EYBL, right? You have Nike EYBL here in New York, so you have to mention New York City Exodus because the only Nike EYBL program in New York City. If we're talking New York State, I think that there is some big impact that is happening with the Empire State Flames. Again, that's a program up in like the Westchester, but like Yonkers,
Mm-hmm.
Westchester-ish area. Their kind of leader of their pack had left a couple years back to become an assistant coach over at Iona on the women's side with Billy. But I will say that Empire State Flames is definitely up there as well. And then, of course, where would I go if I'm not talking about New York City Gauchos, right? I definitely need to include them. And then again, you have a couple of interesting things happening within the grassroots, right? Um, it's not even necessarily grassroots anymore, but they've definitely built up a lot more and recruited a lot more. So you have Castle Athletics. Um,
Yep.
so again, they're pretty popular. And then, of course, again, we already shouted out PD Nation, so I will give her a big shout. But I think that in terms of breadth and scope, right? Because Coach Joe is very specific. Like, she's based in Queens. She's not trying to recruit other kids. She doesn't really care about recruiting other kids because she develops her kids that she has from the jump. And I think that's where we're definitely aligned with. So I'm going to put PD Nation actually with Grow Game. But the one thing but the one other program, of course, that I will say is New Heights, right?
Yes.
Have the new facility, and that again is a huge luxury to be able to have space. So again, five, it's really not that hard. I also, there's teams out in Long Island. There's a couple of more like local based programs per se, but I think that those programs that I mentioned are pretty much the run of the mill in New York City, at least. Some of those programs don't necessarily have a lot of New York City players. So that's a whole nother podcast for a whole nother discussion. But I think that the biggest piece of encouragement for me and what we're doing with Grow Our Game is that we are working with girls within our most underserved communities and trying to develop and get them better so that they can be prepared for that next step in their basketball playing career. Something that kind of a lot of folks have lost sight with over the years and just want to stick with old girls. Um, but the development is so important with that. So that's kind of that's my scoop, and I think
That's
good
that's awesome.
later, right? And I think I'm being very, and I'm pretty sure that folks will agree with me with that selection. Absolutely. So that's kind of where we are.
All right, last one. We'll see if people are going to agree with you with this because everybody top five is different when it comes to this one. Top five players in New York history, girl or guy.
Well, I'm gonna just shout out the girls, right? Tina Charles, and we going by positions.
Mm.
Tina Charles, the five. Shamika Holslaw, like
Woo.
the four, but she was really a stretch four before it was a stretch four.
Talk about Shamika. Let everybody know how nice she was.
Just saying, that girl was nice. Like,
Yes,
say that's
yes.
crazy. I bump into her randomly in Harlem sometimes with her, or with her wife or with her kids, and it's just like, oh my god, like you were so amazing. You have no idea how amazing you were and how impactful you were on just my life, right? But
She's on my bucket list to come on the show. She's like one of the people that's on my bucket list
oh
for
yeah,
sure.
you'd probably be surprised that she would say yes. I would.
Got you.
She's so down to earth like that. Um, so we got that, and now again, as we keep going, it gets real tricky because now we all three, these are like guards, guard, right? New York City, obviously, New York City guards. I can't actually not, even though she's not necessarily New York City per se,
We,
but
we, we count we count upstate and we count Long Island. We
I
that's all. Yeah.
well, we're not counting upstate because I'd have to say Breonna Stewart, but we're gonna go ahead with Sue Bird. We're gonna go with Sue Bird because
Legendary. Yes, yes.
and
Groundbreaking.
I cannot forget about Epiphany Prince. Her
Yes.
career is still going.
Yeah.
She done had the cheat code for playing out in Russia,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm telling you, like she set a serious foundation for what it was to be a player from New York City, and she's super nice, right? And again, I think that the last one I would have to say, sometimes we forget just how impactful and powerful her presence was, and she was never really big into social media stuff, and of course her time was before social media. That's the other piece, because I'm sure that if she was around when social media was popping, which again she'd have to be a little bit older, um you know she'd probably still be in the WNBA, right? Because of that marketing piece that they look for. But and again, it's almost a tie because I absolutely love Renee Taylor, but I'm gonna have to say Shannon Bobbitt. We forget about Shannon Bobbitt, and again,
Another one. Those three are on my bucket list because I have Renee already.
that
Yes.
girl was a killer. She was a killer. She was getting chips. She went to Tennessee. There was already a plan for her when she went to JUCO. Like that. Shout out to Shannon Bobbitt too. Um,
Yes.
but again, that would kind of be my crew. It would be
Woo.
Shannon Bobbitt, Sue Bird, Epiphany Prince, Shamika Holslaw, Tina Charles.
I'll put them five up against anyone.
That's a bad team right there.
That's a bad team right there.
Bad team right there. So shout outs to the queens that are doing their thing, and obviously those are folks that just ran off the top of my head, especially based on the their time and talent. But again, there's so many others that you said, right? Like Renee Taylor still playing, doing a great job. But yeah, this was fun.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Listen, I just want to say this again. We appreciate what you're doing for girls basketball in New York City. You're definitely appreciated all over. And we want to say that you deserve your flowers and the journey just beginning. I know you got even greater things ahead of you and in store for you. So whenever you're ready to come back and you introduce to something else or you get that full-time sponsorship, come on the show and let us know. We definitely want to keep celebrating you.
Right. I appreciate you and I appreciate the time. And again, shout out to all that you're doing for just the history of New York City basketball, right? Like you may want to write a book on that, right? New York City basketball players, and maybe even combine with, Dave to figure things out because Dave's joint, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. That's my guy.
Because
Yep.
also a bit of a historian and there's so many brothers, right? There's more than obviously Tom K was the GOAT, right?
Yes.
Right, and evaluating, but there's so many history holders, right, gatekeepers with the information and the knowledge on what's going on in the history of New York City basketball. So just a food for thought. But I love that you continue to share these stories because they're so important. They're so important, so keep on doing what you're doing, and thanks to everyone that tunes in.
Thank you. And enjoy the rest of your evening and have a good night.
Peace.
All right. Wow. Such an amazing interview. Listen, when we talking about girls basketball, sometimes I think we forget about the greatness of the women who came through New York City and set a precedence, right? Even when I was coming up, you had those girls probably that wasn't getting as much shine and light, but they did amazing things. And speaking of one, you got the great coach Ruth Lovelace, who came up during my era. To see each other all the time. And while she was at Boys and Girls, I was going out to Lincoln. And then she went off to Seton Hall and then came back to coach her alma mater. And she had 5 city championships and a few state championships. So, and there's many others out there. But tonight we want to make sure that Coach Chiene Joy Jones get her flowers, the well-deserved flowers for all the things that she's doing and bringing up the next generation after generation after generation of girl basketball players to make New York City still the mecca of basketball throughout the world. For everybody that joined us, I appreciate you tuning in. I am your host, Glenn Pooh Harding, and you've been watching Basketball Heads Live, the podcast on NYC Basketball Network. We are the official home for New York City basketball. Peace.